how does it feel to be called the best action director in the world at the moment, and the Mozart of mayhem, and being idolized by Hollywood directors, etc.?
During the 1980s and 90s, Hong Kong had the third largest film industry on the planet, behind only Hollywood and Bollywood. At its peak in the early 90s, this single city cranked out 240 films in 1 year. Here are 9 Hong Kong crime films that didn't just rival Hollywood, they rewrote the rules Hollywood still follows today. From gun-soaked melodramas rooted in the wuxia swordplay tradition to ice-cold triad thrillers, these movies came out of a city smaller than most American states, and they influenced the way the entire world makes action cinema. A Better Tomorrow, from 1986. Before this film, Chow Yun-fat was considered box office poison by Hong Kong theater owners. After it, teenagers across the city wore long trench coats in subtropical heat just to look like his character, Mark Gore. Directed by John Woo and produced by Choi Hark, the visionary filmmaker who co-founded Film Workshop and was the primary architect of Hong Kong cinema's 1980s renaissance, A Better Tomorrow is generally credited as the genesis of Gun Fu, the fusion of martial arts choreography with firearm combat, itself descended from the wuxia swordplay films that had dominated Hong Kong screens for decades. The film launched the heroic bloodshed genre that would define Hong Kong cinema for a decade. It became the highest-grossing film in Hong Kong cinema history at the time, earning over 34 million Hong Kong dollars. And it did something Hollywood rarely dared to do. It made you weep for its gangsters. What's important to understand is where Wu came from. He'd trained under director Chang Che at Shaw Brothers Studio, the studio that essentially built the infrastructure of Hong Kong cinema, and it was Chang Che's signature themes of male sacrifice and brotherhood that Wu would later electrify with slow-motion gunplay. Without that Shaw Brothers foundation, there is no heroic bloodshed genre. City on Fire, from 1987. Ringo Lam's masterpiece was based on the real-life Time Watch Company robbery of 1984. Lam attended the trial of the criminals and later said, "I found out they didn't dress well, and everybody looked like a loser." That gritty realism became the backbone of the film. Chow Yun-fat stars as an undercover cop infiltrating a gang of jewel thieves, and the tension is almost unbearable. The film won Best Director and Best Actor at the 7th Hong Kong Film Awards, and on a budget of just 6 million Hong Kong dollars, it earned nearly 20 million. But its legacy extends far beyond Hong Kong. 5 years later, a young filmmaker named Quentin Tarantino released Reservoir Dogs. The similarities were impossible to ignore. At Cannes in 1994, Tarantino addressed it directly, saying, "I steal from every single movie ever made. I love it." And at the American Film Institute in 2017, he finally admitted, "The section that they say I took, I did take from it. Absolutely." For his part, Ringo Lam was gracious about it before his passing in 2018, saying the comparison could only help his career. The Killer, from 1989. John Woo's tale of a hitman and the cop who pursues him is frequently cited as one of the greatest action films ever made. The filming was chaotic. During a chase scene on a tram in Causeway Bay, residents thought it was a real gunfight and called the police. When officers arrived, actor Danny Lee talked to the superintendent so the crew could continue shooting. The climactic house scene alone took 28 days to film. Despite a rocky opening at the box office due to the shadow of the Tiananmen Square massacre, The Killer eventually grossed over 18 million Hong Kong dollars and became Woo's stepping stone into Hollywood. Its influence runs deep. Luc Besson's Léon the Professional owes a direct debt to this film. Hard Boiled, from 1992. Recently ranked by Collider as the greatest action movie of the last 90 years, Hard Boiled features one of the single greatest action sequences ever committed to film, a nearly 3-minute unbroken take through hospital corridors, part of a shootout that took 40 days to film. The story follows a hard-nosed Hong Kong cop and a deep-cover agent who are forced to team up to take down a ruthless triad gun-running syndicate. This was the last film Wu made in Hong Kong before moving to Hollywood in 1993, and it remains the purest expression of everything the heroic bloodshed genre could be. Infernal Affairs from 2002. A decade after the Golden Age, directors Andrew Lau and Alan Mak proved Hong Kong crime cinema was far from finished. Andrew Lau, who had built his reputation as a cinematographer on films like Young and Dangerous before stepping behind the director's chair, co-created with Alan Mak what became the definitive post-Golden Age Hong Kong crime film. Starring Andy Lau and Tony Leung, two of the biggest names in Asian cinema, Infernal Affairs is a razor-sharp thriller about a cop embedded in the triads and a triad member embedded in the police. It was a massive hit, spawning a prequel and a sequel. And then Hollywood came calling. Martin Scorsese remade it as The Departed in 2006, and it won him his first ever Best Director Oscar. Co-director Andrew Lau was diplomatic about it, saying, "Of course I think the version I made is better, but the Hollywood version is pretty good too." Meanwhile, on Oscar night, when screenwriter William Monahan accepted his award, a voice on the PA system announced his screenplay was based on the Japanese film Infernal Affairs. Except, it's a Hong Kong film. PTU from 2003. Johnny To, born in notorious Kowloon, a place synonymous with triad activity, co-founded Milky Way Image and crafted some of the most stylish crime films of the 2000s. PTU, an homage to the dark cinema of French master Jean-Pierre Melville, unfolds over one night in Kowloon. A police tactical unit squad closes ranks to recover a fellow officer's lost service revolver before dawn, bending every rule out of loyalty rather than corruption. It's a slow-burn masterpiece with long stretches playing out in near silence on empty, neon-soaked streets. It earned him international recognition, premiering at the Berlin Film Festival in 2003 and winning him Best Director at the Hong Kong Film Awards the following year. Election 1 and 2, 2005 and 2006. Johnny To's unflinching look at triad politics premiered as an official selection at the Cannes Film Festival and swept the 25th Hong Kong Film Awards, winning Best Film, Best Director, and Best Screenplay. Despite its Category 3 rating, the equivalent of an 18+ restriction, it still grossed over 15 million Hong Kong dollars. Election follows the Woshing Triad, as it does what it does every 2 years: choose a new chairman. The race comes down to two men: Locke, the composed, old-school candidate who respects the society's traditions, and Big D, a volatile rival with no intention of losing gracefully. It's a tense scramble of backroom deals, shifting loyalties, and quiet intimidation over who gets to hold the ceremonial baton that marks the boss. Less than a year after the first film, Johnny To delivered a sequel that was arguably more brutal. Like its predecessor, it premiered at Cannes and was named the best film of the year by the Hong Kong Film Critics Society. Together, the election films land differently than the gunfight operas that made Hong Kong famous. They represent one of the most sophisticated examinations of organized crime and power since The Godfather. Johnny To stripped out the spectacle and built two films about succession, loyalty, and the cost of holding power. Critics named them both the best films of their respective years, and the duology is still read as some of the most pointed political filmmaking to come out of Hong Kong after the 1997 handover. 20 years later, they remain as one of the standards the genre gets measured against. Exiled from 2006. Johnny To is working at the peak of his powers, and the setup for the film is both simple and loaded. Wo, played by Nick Chung, is a former gangster who once tried to kill his boss. He's disappeared and has now come home with a wife and a newborn, hoping to go straight. Two pairs of hitmen turn up at his door, one set to protect him and one to finish him, and every one of them used to be the closest of friends. Critics tend to describe it as a Sergio Leone Western that happens to be set in Macau, all sun-bleached standoffs and tight, close-quarters shootouts where you can almost see the gunpowder hitting the actors' faces. The film premiered in competition for the Golden Lion at Venice, and is now widely held up as one of the best films Johnny To ever made. Hollywood didn't just admire these films, it absorbed them. The widespread adoption of Hong Kong action conventions was so thorough that critics coined a term for it, the Hong Kongification of Hollywood. The Matrix, John Wick, Leon, Reservoir Dogs, The Departed, all of them trace their DNA back to the streets and sound stages of Hong Kong. John Woo's gun fu became the visual language of modern action cinema, and yet the originals remain largely unseen in the West. But that's starting to change. All three of Woo's essential films, A Better Tomorrow, The Killer, and Hard Boiled, are now available in stunning 4K restorations. At age 77, Woo even released an American reimagining of The Killer in 2024. The master's work is finally getting the global audience it always deserved. As John Woo himself once said, "When I'm making an action movie, I don't see it as an action movie. It's like a painting or a poem, sometimes even like a musical."
I usually put the musical element into my action sequence. So when I'm making the action sequence, just like making a dancing scenes, I usually use the soundtrack, the rock and roll music or the classical music to get the inspiration for the actions.
That's the difference. Hollywood made action movies. Hong Kong made art.